In the safety of FTL travel, Commander Redford briefed Wyatt on the political landscape. Being a commoner, he lacked the proper education and know-how to comprehend the complex internal dealings and conflicts that the nobility dealt with on a daily basis. Luckily for him, he was no moron, part of the reason he achieved the rank of warrant officer in the first place. He understood enough to see the bigger picture, and it was not a pretty one. In short, the Duke's betrayal was deep, and his reach was far. To just stand against Duke Draymore's forces, the prince would need to gather every ally he could muster if he wished to thwart the Duke's ambitions. The journey in itself was a blur, and when they dropped out of FTL, they were greeted by a small contingent of loyalist ships. Only 21 ships, but almost all of them were armed and ready to fight. It wasn't quite a fleet suitable for actual battle, but it was well defended. The most impressive ship, however, was at the center of the protective bubble the rest of the ships formed around it. A large cruiser armed across its entire outer hull but retaining a visually appealing vista. That must be the flagship of this fleet, Wyatt thought to himself as he approached the ship next to the royal yacht. The hangar of the flagship was big and wide enough to allow both ships easy access with room to spare, and soon Wyatt found himself surrounded by more luxury and technological marvels than all his prior years of training and service combined. The personnel didn't pay him any mind as he exited his flying trash hauler, but when Commander Redford stepped out of the yacht, everyone saluted him. Seeing him on video was one thing, seeing him in person was another altogether. The older gray-haired man was easily a head taller than him, Wyatt noticed, and his uniform looked like it could cost the same as a line shuttle, if not more. "Warrant Officer Wyatt Staples, I thank you once more for your aid and loyalty. Come with me," Redford said loud enough to be heard and in a commanding tone that didn't leave room for debate that it was an order. Wyatt nodded and followed the man through the corridors of the ship in silence while he admired the beauty of the ship. Old, fevered dreams of an innocent child came to him, imagining himself serving on such a ship. He was a commoner, and unlike most of his dream-chasing classmates back in the academy, he knew his place and knew that piloting or commanding such a vessel was impossible. But serving as a regular crewman? That was more feasible and realistic. Regardless, a dream it was, and it would remain that way. I wonder if even the lesser nobles and any bastard offspring stationed here know how lucky they are, he asked himself, already knowing the answer and not allowing his resentment and distaste for the nobility to show on his face. He was a commoner, and like most commoners, he both envied and disliked the nobles, but he was careful and never allowed it to show, always careful to present himself with submission and apparent loyalty. Well, that wasn't entirely true. He was loyal to the principality, and while he had no love for the stuck-up nobles that ruled it, he wasn't a rebel nor a petty bastard who would love to see a noble grovel at his feet or die in battle if he could help it. Besides, he could make any snarky remarks in his head and won't get in trouble for it. Finally arriving at the bridge, Wyatt saw a few officers and crewmen manning their posts, but the figure wearing a blue suit with golden trims stood out above the rest. He was wearing a cape with the crest of the royal family on it. When he turned, Wyatt saw the face of the blonde prince in person for the first time in his life. His features were refined, and he was more handsome than the propaganda videos and the news could portray. He was tall, just a few inches smaller than Redford, and his build was not quite bulky but not lean either. His eyes were violet, a departure from the usual dullness of cybernetic eyes, and spoke of either genetic alteration or higher-grade cybernetics, the kind that cost the same as his old station 10 times over. But more than that, his expression was soft yet stoic, eyes burning with the intensity of a man ready to claim his birthright. His gaze made Wyatt stiffen at attention. "Report, Commander Redford," the prince spoke. Wyatt stood in silence as Redford quickly and eloquently recounted the assault he had suffered, the unexpected intervention, and their eventual departure. When he was done, the prince allowed himself a brief sigh before turning his attention to Wyatt. "Warrant Officer Wyatt Staples," he spoke in a deliberate, cordial, but powerful tone, causing Wyatt to stiffen more despite the shock of being addressed directly by the prince of all people. "Your actions today have saved the lives of many loyal subjects, and more importantly, the life of my family. I, personally, am in your debt." "Am I dreaming?" Is this even real? Did I actually get hit by that ship's missiles and I'm just experiencing a fever dream before I die? Wyatt asked himself, too perplexed by the prince's words. But the fire in his eyes and his thumping heart revealed that this was reality and that it was happening. Still feeling overwhelmed, he cleared his throat before replying. Your Highness, I only did what I thought was the right thing to do. A commoner such as I cannot be in your debt for doing what is expected of me, he replied as seriously as he could without letting his voice crack due to his nervousness. The prince surprised him again when he offered a faint smirk. Warrant Officer Wyatt Staples, your actions represent the very essence of duty the principality was founded on. Do not lower your actions before me. Commoner or not, you are responsible for the safety of those close to me, he replied, his eyes shining with determination and the brightness of a leader's resolve. Loyalty is its own reward, and those that perform their duty with exemplary actions shall be recognized. Warrant Officer Wyatt Staples, as of this moment, you are officially promoted to the rank of lieutenant. Wyatt took a step back, and even Commander Redford seemed surprised by the prince's proclamation. My prince, I am honored, but I'm a commoner. I know. Under normal circumstances, I wouldn't do this. Our laws, both written and in spirit, would not approve of your increase in rank, for you are indeed a commoner. However, before I am a prince, I am a brother. I am a man, and these are times of turmoil and, one could say, desperation. My gratitude cannot and will not be limited by a mere monetary compensation. Loyalty and duty are to be rewarded for your service. Your bravery reflects what the Duke Draymore, my uncle, lacks in his men. And I fear yours is but the first of many acts of valor we shall need in these trying days that lay before us. It wasn't until that moment that Wyatt finally began to realize the gravity of the situation he was really in. But I'm only a pilot, not even a true combat pilot at that. I'm a refuse ship pilot. And now I'm caught in a web that's about to change the future and history of the Principality. The truth was as clear as the light of a star. His home, the Principality, was going to descend into a civil war at worst and a succession war at best. The weight of the realization hit him harder than his ship going at FTL. Commander Redford, take Lieutenant Wyatt to his quarters so he may rest and suit up properly. Make sure to register him into the memorandum of our ship's logs and personnel, the prince ordered, and turned around. Welcome aboard, Lieutenant Wyatt Staples. Wyatt didn't really hear the prince and only mumbled something incoherent before Redford gently nudged him over and turned to follow the taller man. When they were far away from the bridge and entered the section of the cruiser that housed the officer quarters, Redford spoke up. Do not dwell too deeply on such thoughts, Wyatt, he said seriously, his face stoic. Wyatt snapped out of his mind's maelstrom and looked at the gray-haired man, puzzled. Huh? I know you're scared. You're a commoner. You lack the advantages people such as I possess. And yet, I must urge you to not think too deeply about the coming conflicts, he replied, knowing what was going through the newly minted lieutenant's mind. Easy for you to say that. You're only worried about your wealth and position, he thought bitterly. There's going to be a war, isn't there? To his credit, Redford nodded. It's already brewing and spreading. Soon enough, the houses, both great and minor, will start picking sides and conflict will arise. My liege is trying to avoid an outright civil war from sparking, but he shall not relinquish that which belongs to him by birthright. Only he can lead the Principality. He paused for a moment and placed a hand on Wyatt's shoulder, squeezing it gently. You've already picked a side, the correct side, Lieutenant Wyatt Staples. Be proud of your bravery, loyalty, and dutiful actions, but most importantly, know that had you not aided me when you did, regardless of the outcome, you would still be dragged into this conflict, most likely against your will. He's right on that at least, he thought, surprised that it actually helped to ease his nerves and racing heart. We commoners don't have much room for choice as it is. I guess I will not be dying for my old commander's ambitions, so that's a bonus. Redford's lips curled upward to form a small smile. A fortunate one indeed. Coming to a halt a few seconds later, he turned to leave. This shall be your quarters, Wyatt. You are now logged in the ship's records and manifest. Rest. You've earned it. Thank you, Commander Redford. Take care, he said. and the commander offered a single nod before departing. Standing in front of his door, Wyatt touched the panel at the side of it, and the door slid open to the side, revealing a small cabin. There was a desk, a small fridge, an empty bookshelf above the desk, a lamp, a nightstand, and a bed. Entering his new quarters, he saw a small cubicle that housed the toilet and a shower, most likely. To a noble, it wasn't impressive, but for Wyatt, who had only known the comfort of his ship, communal showers, and a far too small bunk, it was the height of luxury. He laid on his bed, his mind reeling about everything that was happening around him. Then, only moments later, darkness took him, and soon he was asleep, the toll finally catching up to him.